All three of these presentations are going to be available on Monday or Tuesday on the Northern Virginia Regional Commission website, with hopefully links from City of Alexandria and County of Arlington. But you'll be able to access them and I'll look at them. They'll be there for distribution to some of your colleagues. So we'll go ahead and we'll get started with the last group.
It's our pleasure to continue public presentations with Team C, which will be Rosales and Partners, Bergermann and Schlaich and Partners, Simpson, Gompertz, and Hager. Also, I want to remind you that after the third presentation, there will be a public reception, which will be downstairs in the Masonic Hall, where we've been having breaks. There will be refreshments there, and then the actual announcement by the panel is going to occur at 7 o'clock. So it could occur earlier, but it won't occur any later. So we hope to see you all down there, and we can enjoy speaking informally as we wait the panelists' decision for the ranking. I'm happy now to turn it over to Rosales and Partners and the other two firms.
Good afternoon. My name is Miguel Rosales from Rosales and Partners, and we have here with us Michael Stein from Schlaich Bergermann in New York City, and Paul Kasebian from HEA, and one of the landscape architects in our company, Jeff Klusen. We're very excited to come here to make the presentation, and we feel like, every time there is a competition in the US, we always try to enter it because there are so few, and we wish there were more because it really makes the process of creativity much more intense, and we feel like it's a very good way to find a very good solution for a crossing like this. We have a lot of experience in large-scale bridges, but we tend also to focus on pedestrian bridges. There is a fundamental difference between a pedestrian bridge and a large highway bridge. I think it has to do with the scale and the detailing and the fact that you can touch it and you can walk on it. So it's really sort of a different scale. And we felt like, although we have a lot of projects in the joint venture, not only here in the US, but all over the world and in Europe, we try to focus in the presentation mainly in projects in the US, because I think they have a particular challenge. And as you know, it's not very easy to do a beautiful, unique bridge in the US, unfortunately. It's quite hard. So we're going to show you some examples of, what that we have done, and then finish with the concept. And actually, I was walking today in Alexandria, and, we were part of the Woodrow Wilson Bridge competition. That was almost 10 years ago. We were part of the team that won that. And it's nice to see the bridge finish and, people enjoying that area. We want to start first with the Liberty Bridge. This bridge is 5 years old, and it's in Greenville, South Carolina. This area used to be very different. There used to be a highway bridge here that was 6 lanes wide, and they had a column right over the falls. So the people actually forgot that there was a fall in the city. And nobody could see it. It was a big cover over the waterfall. And a new mayor came into power, and he decided to demolish the highway and do a new bridge. But this bridge used to be in this alignment, was right over the water. And we decided the first gesture would be to move it away, because we wanted actually not to have any supports in the water and have a very good view of the waterfall. And just by doing that, it really opened a lot of possibilities. We feel like the alignment of the bridge is very important because it will really determine what kind of structure you can work and what kind of issues you can address. This view of the bridge is a 380 feet wide, long bridge, 12 feet wide, and it has 2 towers. It's an extremely transparent bridge, and it's been very successful. It won all the awards in the United States. And we feel like it fits very well with the site, because once you are here and you see the waterfall and you experience the nature, is really unforgettable, especially at night. It became the most romantic kind of walk in the city, and I'm always amazed, how people enjoy it. Some of the issues that were important to resolve was, what kind of structure this will be. And because it's a circular bridge, we were able to support only from one side. And this is the first bridge in the United States that has a suspension cable only on one location. And that allows you to have a clean view of the waterfall. We also spent a lot of time in the detailing and, making as transparent and as clean as possible. And that's something that is very important. If the concept cannot be translated into a good detailing, especially in the pedestrian bridge, you really lose a lot. It's quite important to have all the details very well resolved. I have to report that the bridge, since it has been built, it has had a lot of development. There's about $200 million of buildings that are now close to the bridge, and the whole downtown was kind of revitalized when the bridge was completed, and also the park. And both elements were very important for making Greenville, more accessible to that zone of the area. Because before, the downtown used to stop like 2 or 3 blocks before the bridge, and now the whole downtown has been extended, so it's quite successful. These are some other views. It's very dramatic from underneath. I think the lighting came out really nice. It almost feels like water, when you are walking on it. And we leave the lights on all the time. They are LED lighting, and then, when the night starts to come, the bridge starts to glow, and it starts to become stronger and stronger, and it's quite dramatic. And they are hitting here, and they are quite unobstructed. You really don't understand where the light is coming. I'm going to show another bridge. This one is in Fort Worth. It's called the Lancaster Bridge. Actually, the city is going to name it on the person that used to clean the river. This is the Trinity River. And this area is very close to this bridge called Lancaster. And this is an important bridge to them. It's a sort of a historic bridge. And the city wanted to connect this park to the downtown. So the bridge needs to cross in this location. It's a very kind of pastoral, very kind of quiet setting. And we felt like in this crossing we should have a structure that was not too showy, that was not too like iconic, because we felt like the landscape was very simple. And in this case, they really didn't have a lot of funding, so we did the closest we could do is a straight line. Every time you make a straight line on the bridge, it's always cheaper. If you make it circular, it's always more expensive. And the funds here were very limited. But it's about $2.5 million. It's an interesting bridge because it's a combination of an arch and a stretched ribbon. And usually you don't have this combination. You either have an arch or you have a stretched ribbon. But in this case, we felt that it would be nice to have this kind of undulating shape where you walk in that you would not know what's happening on the other side. Kind of like a Japanese type of structure when you go up and down. And it's lucky that this system was also working very well structurally, because, this force wants to come this way, and this wants to come this way, so they kind of neutralize each other, so it makes the foundation quite inexpensive. And, that was an important consideration because of the lack of funds. One thing that was interesting is that the local community, there is a company called Streams and Valley. They take care of the bridge. They have fundraised to make this bridge possible. And that's something that, if there is a good design, it's something that you can always entertain, try to get some private funding. And both in the Liberty Bridge and in this case, we were successful to do that. This is another view, when you are going up and down the structure. It's kind of like, like a hammock. This is another structure. This one is in Sheboygan, in Wisconsin. It's next to the lake, and it's a movable bridge. It's an interesting bridge because the way it opens. Usually swing bridges don't open in that manner. And people really like it when it's open, so now they leave it a lot of time. They're going to leave it open instead of closed. It's in a very important location because this is the delta of the river, the Sheboygan River, and this is the lake. And for many years, they had this big development done. And there was no way to go from here to here. People had to walk all the way here and down, and the city wanted to have a crossing there. But one of the issues was that it was not in the same angle. So if you continue to do a straight bridge, we will hit some buildings that they didn't want to demolish. So we worked very hard to find an alignment that would be harmonious. How do you cross, in a way that you can keep the context? And we decided to make it in this S shape. And at the end of these two walks, there is a long street here and another street here. We felt it was important to have an element here, a tower or something that people will see from a distance and will attract them to go there. Because there was not a way to see it from far away. So that was an important consideration. That's why we have the two towers here, and then we have the S shape, and then, the way that it opens is like a wing in both directions. We also feel like when we do a pedestrian bridge, it's very important to do a model. And I would recommend you, if you're going to go ahead with this structure here in the four-rear mile, that you should do a model. It's never quite the same to have a rendering and a model, because the bridge is always very sculptural, and you can really not understand the scale unless you have this model. And actually this model is quite interesting because actually it opens. So it's very exciting for people to see the bridge, how the bridge is working, with the motor and everything like that. The last project I'm going to show you, this one is another competition that we won about 2 years ago. It's for a crossing near Washington, D.C. that connects to a train station. And it's near Parkside, one of the developments in this train station. And this was a hard project because you have a lot of highways. It's about 10 lanes wide that you have to cross, and it's I-295, so it cannot really be interrupted. You have to have it continuous all the time. And then there is the trains. There is a train station, and there is two types of trains: the commuter train, and then the other train, more of the regional train. And the competition brief wanted us to have a straight bridge going across here, but we felt like it was important to make a connection directly to the train station. That is this connection here. And that's why we curved the bridge. And we're never afraid to change the alignment of a bridge if it's going to serve an important purpose. I think, that's an important consideration. And in this case, they wanted to have a covered bridge. And we decided to do this cylindrical structure that has these modules that you can build off-site, and then you can bring this entire piece and put it over the highway at one point, and that's, save you a lot of time, and then you don't have to have any scaffolding underneath. And one of the problems with covered bridges is that many times the structure of the cover does not relate to the structure underneath. So it looks very inconsistent. Here, the structure itself is the cover itself. So, it's very, very compatible. And because it's quite a big span, it's about 600 feet long, and we wanted to keep these rings quite thin, so it would be a lot of transparency. We also have these cables, these suspension cables that connect to each of the supports, and they help to transmit the loads, to the ends of the supports, and also add a lot of interest, to the structure, because they follow kind of similar curves, but in the other direction. And you can see here the direct connection from the train station to the bridge. And I feel in this case, because you are going to stay above, it will give you a very good sense of safety to come into the train station. Right now, people have to go under the trains and then come here, and there is a ramp here that goes to a pedestrian bridge. It's very difficult. So, we always feel like the pedestrians will take priority, and we always try to put them above if we can. And, in some of the highway bridges we have done, we also try to put the pedestrians at a different level, because you feel much safe in that side. This is a photo of the model. Again, it was very important to see the scale of the elements and all of the detailing, how the structure would work. And one of the last projects I'm going to show you is this one is in Cleveland. It's a movable bridge too, and it's in a very important location. And it opens like that. It's completely different. Instead of swing, this is a bascule. But the bascule is quite interesting because there is no counterweight in the back. It's mainly used hydraulically and with the cable. And many of these bascule bridges have very heavy counterweights in the back, and it makes them quite unattractive. In this case, because it's a pedestrian bridge, we could be able to do that, and Schlaich Bergermann was very instrumental in resolving, how to open it and close it. And one thing I like about this bridge is that when it's open, it's very sculptural, and it's in a very important location. It's right at the entrance of Lake Erie, and next to it is the IMP Rock and Roll Museum, and every time there is a postcard taken of Cleveland, they always take it from there, from the lake. For this bridge, it's going to be right here, and for many years, you were not able to cross. They had a finger pier, but they was never able to get a resolution here. And again, we encountered this problem here that we wanted to make a smooth transition, and we make this very shallow curve to do that. We make it straight. It always look very awkward because this area here is used for boats. So again, we try to shape the bridge in a way that will fit well with the context and also give us another possibility. And once you make it curve, it was possible to only support it from one side with a single structure. And in this case, we also felt like to have a kind of counterweight to the famous museum, we should concentrate the structure only in this side and very lightly touch the finger pier on the other side. And that's why, it has that shape. And this is another view, when the bridge is open. And it's quite funny because when people look at structures, they always make associations, what does it look like? And I think a lot of people think this looks like a wing, and then, this part here is called Voinovich. Some people think it looks like a V. So, you never know, what that people are going to take from a structure, but we are very pleased with the structure and how it is coming about. This is at night. Again, I think that possibilities are endless in terms of lighting, and this is a quite dark area, so we feel like the walking surface should be illuminated, and you should illuminate these steel arch also. And now we come to your project. I think that this is a very difficult site, mainly because you have all of these electrical wires and the towers and all of the conditions that are happening there. And when we first came to see it, it looked quite grim. so I was kind of concerned, how we're going to find a structure that will fit in that location. But I think once you do the restoration, you have more greenery and the trees, and you restore the area, it's going to be much pleasant. And right after the site, it's much nicer. When you get to the inlet and then you have more of the reserve part with more trees, I think it's going to look, quite nice. Another thing that was surprised is that at night it's quite dark. There is not a lot of lights, in that immediate location. So I think illuminating the bridge could make a big difference. And it's very important in this site that you are able to see the bridge from the highway, from the Route 1 or the street that is adjacent. Because that's going to attract a lot of people. If you are not able to see the bridge from a distance, it's going to be hard to make that a special place, because right now it's a little bit desolate, where it's located. Can we go back? For some reason, I cannot show you the plan. Can you, somebody move it back? The next slide. It doesn't work. Here, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, this is the plan. And as I was telling you, what I felt it was very difficult, it was all these electric wires and all those towers. So originally, the bridge was supposed to come here, to connect Commonwealth Avenue and East Street. But I really felt like we should not have the bridge under the electrical wires until they are, maybe in the future they are going to be replaced, but the competition bridge didn't say that was going to replace. So we felt that it was important to move it away. And we curved it in this way so it will be, obvious for people to come here to cross it and go into their location. And once we did that, we felt like it would be nice to make this more of a space, kind of a space where people come and you could have a demonstration project. Kind of like a small piece of how the future is going to be for the whole canal. So we feel like there could be a little area here at the end of this street where you could have like information about the whole project, and you could actually also have information about the bridge structure. A lot of people like to know, how such a bridge would be constructed. Then we put one support here, and then a clear span of about 360 feet. To me, it's very important not to have any supports in the water, because it will make much cleaner, and then the vegetation will go underneath. That was important. And we feel like this side is not as nice as this side. So we put the cables only on this side. And then we put a kind of like an area here that has a different material. This is actually going to have like a wood deck. And in this area, people could sit and look out. And then this screen of the cables will kind of screen a little bit of the electrical wires and the ugly highways that are, on the other side. So, that's the way, that's what we did here. And we didn't want to have any supports here because this is already so congested. You have all the big towers, and you have the electrical company, and you have some other things. And we felt like if we're going to support a big span, it was nice to have a special place for it. And that's why, we located it in that place. It's a simple structure. It's a suspension bridge, and it has a single tower. It's about 120 feet high, and in this direction about 230, but because it curves a little bit longer. And we feel like having the tower incline actually is a positive, because it takes away from the straight towers that you have all over the place. So having it in that direction is kind of gently going towards the water, and it will be, a very transparent structure, and we think it's not too dominant in terms of the contents. We didn't see the other one either. Yeah, this one here. Thank you. This is a cross section where you can see the scale. This is a 12 feet wide bridge, but we have this other element, where you can sit. This is about 6 feet, but altogether at the center will be 18 feet. And then it kind of diminishes in a curve. And we feel like it would be nice to have an area where bicyclists can cross, so it's like a zone, of the hardest speed. And then next to the other side where you can see all the vegetation, there will be a little zone where people can sit and can stop and look out. And we would like to change the material there. And you can see here some of the detailing of all of the elements. It's very light, it's a simple structure. Not very easy to engineer though. It's going to be complicated to do that, because again it's curved, and it has cables only in one direction. So, only a very talented engineer can figure that out. And here you can see the cross section is a steel box here, and this area will be open with beams, and we'll change the material. So you will have 12 feet here, and this is the variable cross section. We make the railings quite transparent, and we introduce wood in the railings. I think because you want to make this place more natural, and you have to bring on the restoration of the plants, having wood in the bridge is very nice. And if you have been in some bridges in Paris, they use a lot of wood, and sometimes it's a little bit slippery, but we're making the main crossing in concrete. So this area is really just for people to sit and look out. This is another view where you can see the structure. We can see the little plaza that we wanted to put here. Then when we were in the site, we saw there's a lot of people fishing. And I wondered, how good the fish are, but there were a lot of people fishing. So it would be nice to have a way to come down, and then maybe have a little deck here where people could fish. And then we feel like this whole area becomes like a little place, like a little space when you can fish, you can learn about the project, you can cross and look at the bridge. So it starts to work like a unit. And that's really important to have something like that at the beginning of such a big project, so people get enthusiastic, and you start to feel like it's possible to, to do the whole restoration of the whole structure. And now I would like to introduce Michael Stein from Schlaich Bergermann. He's going to explain to you a little bit about the structural considerations. In a bridge of this scale and this configuration, the structure and the architecture cannot be separated. I mean, it's really a unit, and we work very closely, to make a structure as elegant as possible, but also feasible. Because you don't want to do a proposal, a concept, and afterwards it's not feasible. So, he's going to explain a little bit about some of the structural considerations.
Thank you, Miguel. And I'm also very excited to be here. I was thinking about you, and I thought you might not be so excited that I am talking now, as I'm just a structural engineer, and you expect a lot of numbers now. I will spare you that. I will not talk a lot about numbers. But I wanted to at least show you a couple of the principles we need to apply here for a structure like that, and perhaps start with Schlaich Bergermann's understanding of what a structural engineer is actually doing. And we are not here to make an architectural gimmick happen. We do not see that this is our major role. We want to actively influence the structure and make an efficient structural system out of our proposal. And curved bridges have been built now in the past, say, 20 years, quite a lot of times. We have built, say, roughly dozens of them, but they are all different. You saw a couple of them in Miguel's presentation. They are all different, they are all unique, but they follow, all of them, a certain principle, and this is that we make actively use out of that curvature. We are not only reacting to the curvature and think, oh my gosh, it's curved, now how to make it stable. No, we think it is curved and we should make use out of it. And one of that principles is shown here, looks very complicated, but all I want to show there is that this main bending moment, which develops in all the bridges, in all straight bridges, in a curved bridge is actually dissolved also in torsion. That means the main direction, the main bending moments are influencing torsional moments and vice versa. So this basic principle can now be very well used for the support of a structure like that. And as Miguel already explained, we want to support the structure just from one side to make it nicer, to make the views nicer. And this, now I start here. Go back here. Here it is. It's just slow. It's just slow. And we want to hang it just from one side. And a straight bridge, everybody can imagine, it simply flip over and fall down. So how to do it is to use the curvature and to say, well, it wants to flip down, but due to the fact that it's curved, you can resolve that torsional moment into a main bending moment. And this is the whole trick, and you need to design it like that to achieve, at the end of the day, really a section like that, which is just 2.5 feet, something like that high. It's a very slender for a span like that, and to avoid the big torsional boxes you might expect if you do things like that. Also, the suspension bridge itself is, of course, the lightest way to support a structure like that. You see it in each highway bridge that actually, as soon as you reach a certain span, you come to the cable-supported bridge, be it a cable stayed or a suspension bridge. It's always the cable which, at the end of the day, proves to be the most efficient structure. So it's a combination out of this suspension plus the curve, which makes it possible to suspend a bridge like that. All you see here is, and this is another important principle for our work, is needs to be calculated, of course, in 3D, and we actually started that process to provide you, the audience, not only with an idea of how it could look like, but really show how the shape of the cables and how the inclination of the mast and etc. would really look like. So we created this model, a 3D model which basically looks, of course, much more boring than the renderings, as you expected already. So you see the mast, you see the backstay cable, and you see the curve, plus you see already the zone for the pedestrian where they want to rest. We made a very initial calculation to show that this bridge behaves like it's expected, and to show that the moments and normal forces and all these numbers are in a range which make this bridge an economic and a competitive alternative to cross that river. I think this is more or less what I want to show, and I give Dr. back to Miguel.
When we were thinking about the project, we felt like there is supposed to be other bridges also across the formal run, and we feel like you can form like a family of bridges, and using the same curve system, you can do many different applications. You could have towers on this location. For example, this one has an arch that could look like that. But we feel like each of these will continue to have a very good tradition and excellence of design and of detailing. And this bridge is going to be very important because it's going to be the first. So every time that you do the first step, you're really going to set the scene for the whole system, I think, future bridges. So we really need to make the best possible solution here. And that was one of the thoughts that we had. This is a view of, when you see it from underneath. You can see the sweeping curve. Then you see the area where, people are going to stand and stop, and that will have like a wood decking here. The tower, and as you can see, it fits, I think, very well in the context. This, of course, is with all the landscaping already in place, and, that will be a few years back in the future, but we feel if you start first with a very nice bridge, all your project will continue. It's really going to be a huge catalyst, for the whole development of the area. And this is another view. This is the area that we were talking about. The railings will be very transparent. We feel the colors should be kind of related to the landscaping. And you can see how the structure is really strong here and very soft in this area. It gives you really two views. And this, to me, creates a very nice screen against the wires and everything that you see in that side. And then you can really focus a little bit on the landscape on the other location. So it's really like, it's both asymmetrical in terms of the whole crossing, but also asymmetrical in terms of the section. And I think that responds well to the site. And at night, this area could be treated slightly different. We were thinking might be possible that we put light underneath, they will go through the wood. And then you could have this also illuminated with a certain muted color. We feel like it should not be too overwhelming, it should be quite light. And we have encountered that blues and purples that they have now, the LED lights can be quite attractive. And then when you see it from underneath, you could make a very strong statement of the circle, by illuminating this area. Again, this light will go through, and people will be able to see some of it, when you are standing here. And it creates kind of a strong dynamic, with one light underneath and on top. In a structure like this where there's nothing around it, we feel like, doing this ribbon of illumination is quite important because people will feel attracted to it. You'll see it from a distance and it will be, quite interesting to come and see it. And this is another view at the day, and now we would like to open it to questions and answers. Thank you very much.
a little bit confused, and perhaps you can help me out. You have 3 team members, is that right?
Yes.
Your firm, Schlaich, and you presented a number of projects to us: Woodrow Wilson, Liberty Bridge, Oregon, a pedestrian bridge in Washington, D.C., a couple of others. Was that done by the team, or different bridges by different team members, or what was the relationship of your team to those projects?
All of the pedestrian bridges were done together with Bergermann. All of the ones that we show in the presentation. I have been working with Paul on a bridge in Boston, so we have a old relationship. We worked on the Longfellow Bridge in Boston. But the main role was brought because we need to have a local engineer. So they have a Virginia license and they have an office here. And we usually do that. We cannot have a license in every state. So we will do a joint venture with Schlaich Bergermann, and we will do the concept. The concept like this one, they do up to maybe 35% preliminary design, and then the local engineer will complete the construction drawing with our review. So that's a structure that has worked for us in the past, especially in the federal grants, like the one that is allocated to this project. The Virginia DOT is going to put some requirements, and it will not be easy for us to do the project without a local engineer. So that was
And then one other question: the Woodrow Wilson Bridge. What was the relationship of your team to that bridge?
Well, the Woodrow Wilson Bridge is really a project that Rosales and partners participated during the competition process about 10 years ago. We were part of the team of Parson Parson Transportation Group, it used to be the Lucas, and we were part of the team that won the competition, and then we worked on the preliminary design with them.
I thought that was Mr. Gottemüller who was involved in that. Am I mistaken?
Well, we just have a company together. It used to be Rosales, Gottemüller and Associates.
I see. So, but you're not, Mr. Gottemüller was not as part of your team now, is that correct?
No. The company was split like 4 years ago.
Well, thank you. I think that's a beautiful presentation. I think it's a beautiful object, in particular in relation to the landscape as envisioned here. I enjoyed a great deal all the examples you provided earlier. I thought they all had clear thinking about their relationship to the urban structure of things. I wonder, when you step back a little bit and think about Commonwealth Avenue and Eads Avenue, and their relationship or function within the urban structure or framework of those communities on either side of the bridge, what bearing that had or might have on your thinking about this object and its position?
Well, we felt like, having a taller element that could be visible from both streets was important, because otherwise you would not know that there is a bridge. And this bridge is going to be the tower about 120 feet. So we feel like it will be tall enough that you were able to see it. I really didn't want to do a bridge right in the line of the streets because of the electrical wires, and also it didn't seem to me that there was any termination. It seemed very, on both sides there was not a beautiful building at the end or anything that, you will be able to kind of connect to that area, and that's why we moved the bridge around. But we could have done, for example, a bridge with 2 towers, but then the tower would be shorter, and they would not be as visible. And we felt like having a taller element, even if it's not in the axis of the street, you still be able to see it from a distance, particularly at night, if it's illuminated. So that was kind of the thinking process about that.
I have a couple of questions. The curve of the bridge, it's almost a semicircle, at least appears in plan, which means that, and people are sitting along that edge, or at least you're saying that's the way it's oriented, upriver or upstream, right? But it means that half the people are looking into the water treatment plant, and half the people are looking into the park, which seems to me sort of an unfortunate thing. The other thing, I think you're very brave to use cable structure in this situation. The notion of being able to compete notion of being able to compete with all that other stuff means you're a very brave person. But I wonder if, in the end, it isn't going to look like one of those things that's just falling down. I just wonder about the context. I think it's a very beautiful object when I see it there, and I can imagine it in that kind of bucolic setting. But it's a little hard for me to think that it would be quite that comfortable in the context of all that high-powered wiring and tables and towers. Did that bother you at all? I mean, I can understand, I really appreciate the notion of not wanting to go straight across from Commonwealth over to whatever the name of that street is over there. But I'm not convinced that this complete shape is the way to do it. I'm not convinced that a single cable, a single tower structure is going to be able to hold its own in that mess over there.
Well, we had that conversation a lot. Should it be an arch perhaps or something stronger? But then I felt like you needed like a counterpoint to the cables and the wires on one side, and that's why we put the tower on that side. And we felt like that would be the tallest element that we could have. If you do some other structure, probably it would be lower. And then the other thing is like when you see the wires, they kind of have like this kind of shape. Especially the wires that go over the channel. And I said, maybe, the suspension bridge will look nice with that kind of shape, kind of hanging. And it's a very difficult site. But we feel like even if the site is not very beautiful, if the bridge is beautiful, it's really going to change a lot. Because people will want to come and see it. And you need attention for this project. You need to, create a momentum that will allow you to get more grants and more support and start to do all the landscaping. And originally, when I went to the site, I felt, it's going to be really ugly because I just saw the photos. But when I was there, I feel like it has potential, particularly the zone that has the trees and the landscape on one side. So why not emphasize that first? Do that as an emphasis. And then when you have more money and more time to do all the greenery and the restoration, then the beach will be already established. And you will already have that relationship there. So that was the thought process.
Just one afterthought, that sort of perfect semicircle of the bridge means it's a hell of a walk to get from one side to the other. And the question is there enough traction over there? You're going to wind up at the water treatment plant. I really wonder about it. Again, it gets back to my concern about the geometry. That perfect semicircle has a problem, I think, in terms of the diameter of the thing, as well as the orientation of it.
When I could say something about that. No, go ahead.
This is following up, mainly not necessarily for the ultimate length of the bridge or the particular geometry of it, but the way that it hits either side of the run is very privileged to certain oncoming of walkers or bikers, and it's primarily focusing back towards the east. You enter from the east and you get dumped off facing east, and the pedestrian path that exists now that kind of wraps around the ballpark and the path that ultimately takes you on the north side of the run heads off in the west direction. And so I'm just wondering if you had some particular strategy in mind to focus the entry and exits, particularly to the east, and not allow for a blend from both east and west onto the bridge.
Well, you see, the view is very different from one side to the other. So I think even if the curve was in one direction, people would want to go into the bridge and look out. That was, one important consideration. And I feel like, when I look at other suspension bridges, it's so exciting to be in the structure itself when you have the cables only on one side, because people are not used to that. So I feel that the bridge in itself is going to become like a destination. So it's not a matter too much, where are you going to come from. If it's a destination in itself, people are going to be attracted to it. And to me, it was important to create a space. And if you had a straight bridge, you will not have that. You will have just one side or the other. And by making this, kind of gently curving up and down, I felt like that was going to create this little kind of oasis, in the whole city, and it will attract a lot of people and will be very successful. That was my thought.
We have time for more questions.
Anyone in the audience?
Speak up. What time are we on?
We're ahead of schedule.
I feel like Jerry Springer.
I'd like to follow up on the comments about how nicely you presented this and how clearly you're thinking about the bridge. It's a really beautiful, beautiful bridge. And I like the way you described the asymmetrical cross-section with the cables on the inside and the view upstream. But I'm wondering, related to that, it seems like from your description and from the rendering there that the bridge is arching up and therefore is the surface of the bridge banked, super elevated. And does that make for a more awkward viewing position and benches if I'm kind of looking off of a banked curve?
It would not be angled, so
The-
it's straight.
Is that, so the section of the platform is actually flat? Okay.
So it's straight. And we have about 3.5%, so it's a quite comfortable slope. It's not close to the 5%. I feel like 3.5%, 4% is good enough because it gives you a nice curve, in elevation, and also allow you to have the drain, the water to go easily to the sides. And we have used other bridges with that slope, and it's quite comfortable. And it's actually quite exciting when you go up and you are right at the center, and you can see out, and then you go down. It's kind of like a passage, from one side to the other.
And is it a continuous bench or is it a series of
No, there are 5 benches.
Five benches.
It's small 5 benches. I don't think it should be a continuous bench because you should be able people to walk, and kind of mingle. And I think at night it would be very dramatic to be there. And if you are sitting on wood, it always makes you more relaxed. You are in concrete. I don't know why. I think maybe because it's nature, So that's why we put wood in that area, because we want people to be able to stay there and look out, look at the river, at the water, and then hopefully start to see all the plants grow, the new regeneration of the whole river, the whole channel, sorry. So that's why we decided to change the material there.
Anyone else? Over here. Yeah.
Thank you. I was just wondering if you, again, it goes back to the flooding question that was asked to the first group that presented. And by the way, you gave an excellent presentation, very clear thought. I think it's a beautiful design. But did you consider the flooding, and how did you deal with that in the elevation of the bridge?
Well, all of this is above the clearance of the bridges, the existing bridges, so you're always higher. And then we try to put as least obstacles as possible, because if you put any obstacles on the water, then you have issues with the hydraulics of the water and the river. So that's why we make the clear span. That has been our experience. If you put less obstacles, it's better. When we do the restoration of the whole channel.
My comment is more of a comment that was made earlier about the bridge being a hell of a long run. Actually, it can't be long enough for me. I think it's a beautiful bridge.
Well, I think, like what I was saying is that, we were doing a bridge in New York City, and people walk there very fast, it's not like other cities. And you could have to make a straight bridge, but the curved bridge gave you such a beautiful view, because, it's always changing, and then you could really see the whole panorama that people don't care. They don't care, they actually look forward to go in the distance. Instead of being in the there, it became an incentive. So it really depends on, how the bridge is configured. And if you have a nice, detail in the railing and all the details are very well thought through, it's a pleasure actually to be in the structure. It's not a functional thing. It's more like a pleasure that you go there, experience the location. So I agree with you.
Anyone else? Is that it? One more.
Do we have time?
Sure.
We're ahead of time.
Just my own questions in my head, and I'd love your reaction to them. It's back on the alignment of the curve, its relationship to the river. And two things. Spatially, the way this curve makes a place that gathers. I always feel the inside of the curve is the direction it seems to suggest, and yet I feel like the upstream direction is the one that's preferenced here, and it's clear in your thinking too. I like the wooden delineation on the floor, but I wonder both about the outside curve in relation to any spatial qualities that the big curve of the bridge makes. Also the comfort of looking upstream on the outside of a curve, bicycles, with some velocity, and you're back to that. What about the level of comfort on the outside of the curve in a situation like this, do you think?
Here, or near the cable. You mean on the side that has cables or on the other side?
Outside curve, upstream edge.
Well, there is no cables, right?
Yes.
Well, we didn't think that bicycles should be in there.
No, I understand there's a segregation. I'm just saying your back is turned, looking upstream, bicycle travel on the opposite side, immediately adjacent to you. What about the comfort level of outside curve?
Well, I would think that, if you're a bicyclist and you are going to enter the bridge and you see some benches, you would not tend to be close to that. You would tend to go, in the other direction. And it's 12 feet wide. 12 feet wide. And in our experience, for example, for the bicycles. No, bicycle and pedestrians, but the concrete piece is 12 foot wide. And, we have done bridges that are 12 feet, and people think that, it's not wide enough. But in our experience, it's quite wide, especially if you have a little area where people can stay, separate. That's why altogether it's about 18 feet. So I think the change in the color, the width, I think that it's not a big problem for the bicyclist. It's a perception issue, so it's going to depend on how the people approach it. But we felt like having zones in the beach was important. A zone, different zones. So you can go at a different speed, And once you are in the wood area, you could not go fast because you have the benches and then, you have the wood. So to me, it was important to have two different speeds, so two different uses in the same bridge.
We have plenty of time. We're ahead of time because the presentation was slightly shorter than an hour.
I thought Michael brought up a very good point. I thought it was very interesting how you created this half-round bridge that became a frame for this demonstration project. And it seems to me that if the bridge were flipped and you had the walkway on the inside surface, then when you're sitting and taking on the view, you're looking into the demonstration project and then the nice views beyond. the way you have it right now, with the curve and the seating area on the outside, you're taking advantage of the view, the natural view, but you're turning your back on the demonstration project.
Well, I wouldn't say turning my back because, it's a very transparent structure. So you would still be able to see, in any direction. And the idea of putting the cables in that area was because I'm really concerned about the electrical wires. So having some kind of foil, some kind of screen that would screen that area to me was very important. And, when you do this kind of cable system and you are able to see the connections, people are attracted to it naturally. Because if you touch it, I don't know if you have crossed the Brooklyn Bridge in New York, for example, if you touch it, you know that there is tension there. And it's very, very interesting that you're able to touch the cable. So I think both sides are going to have interest. On one side, you're going to have the views with the landscaping. On the other side, you're going to have the structure. It's almost like you have technology and nature together. And to me, that's what a bridge should be, where you merge technology and nature together. And this way, you are kind of doing that. You have a more natural, zone with the wood, and then you have a more high-tech on the other side that kind of protects you a little bit from the wires and the electrical company and, all of that problem you have on that side.
Thank you. This bridge would be incredibly beautiful at night, as you showed in some of your slides, where these thin gossamer threads are illuminated and the lights underneath. It'd be a magnificent thing to see. And one of the interesting comments that you made about the single mast, that you wanted to be of that height. What did you say, 120 feet? 120 feet. So it would be visible. In the daytime, it is so slender, it's so delicate, and the wires are so almost transparent. The actual structure wouldn't really be able to be seen from a distance in the daytime, except the tower. But even in that rendering right there, it's difficult to see. So you also mentioned something about, well, if we did 2 towers, then the height of the masts would not be as high. And so my question is the height of the mast a function of the lineal distance? I mean, why couldn't you make 2 towers at 120 feet? What would prevent you from doing that?
There is a consideration of the suspension cable,
I mean, very general, a suspension bridge roughly has a sag of the suspension cable itself, which is roughly an eighth of the span of the bridge. For a bridge like that, which is actually just a half bridge, you need to consider also the other half, where the suspension bridge would go up, but it's cut in half, basically, here. So the overall length, from a structural point of view, for this suspension cable is double the span you actually see. So it's not 300 and 600. That's why it's a pretty standard height of that mast. Overall length divided by 8, roughly. Now, if you go to 2 suspension, to 2 masts, you cut the overall length, the real active length of that bridge down by half. Now you really have the 300 to 400 feet. And if you divide this by 8, you simply reduce the whole height of the mast again. If you keep it up there and you increase, for example, the sag or something like that, the dynamic of the bridge is almost lost. It looks very strange to have in a suspension cable too much of a sag, and it's also inefficient, again from a structural point of view, because asymmetric loads and stuff like that are simply worse than with when you have the right span to sag relation.
Well, I also would say that, where the tower is located now is very strategic, because on the other side, you have all of these foundations with the big towers. And I felt like we put another tower there, it would get all confused, kind of more confusion. but putting it on the other side and making it an angle, make it like special, and different. And, the elegance of the suspension bridge is always that it's low. If you compare it to a cable stay bridge, for example, the cables are much more steep, and they never look as elegant. I mean, there's nice cable stay bridges, but I think the suspension bridges are always the best. They are the classic, and they've been there for the longest time. Even the primitive civilizations have suspension bridges already, like the Incas and in Peru. So it's a classic shape that is very appealing. And what we're trying to do here is to take a classic, suspension bridge and modify it and bring it to the future. This is like a futuristic suspension bridge, but the principle is still the same. It still is a catenary, with cables hanging. And in my experience, there is 3 factors that are going to make it successful for a bridge. One, that people have to remember it. It has to be memorable. When you see it, you remember it. So it has to have a certain uniqueness, a certain specialness. The second thing is that it has to be about the future. It has to be the best technology of the future, because the bridges are not of the past. The bridges are always of the future. And if you try to make a bridge all looking and, kind of like retro, it's never that successful. It should be always about, the future. And the last thing, it has to fit in the context. When you see it, it has to improve the context. Many areas are very beautiful, and you put a bridge on it, it destroys the area. But when the bridge improves what is there, and actually makes it better, then you have the 3 factors, and I'm quite confident this bridge will achieve those 3. And I hope that everybody likes it.
Thank you very much. Have some concluding remarks.
Thank you. Well, this has been a happy occasion for me. It's been an exciting occasion. I'm Neil Sigmund, and I'm Judy Noritaki's co-chair of the 4 Mile Run Joint Task Force. And we've had what I think are 3 splendid presentations today. I know they've gotten my juices stirred, and from what I've heard in the breaks, listening to people's comments, there's a lot of excitement. And it's the kind of excitement I think that we all envisioned when the master plan was developed. And it's really great to see that our vision coming to life now. For the rest of the evening, what we're going to do, I think we're going to go to a reception, and I see on the floor here arrows pointing towards the reception, and we're going to follow those arrows. We'll go to the reception, and then I think we need to be back in here at 6:30. Is that right? At which time, or in the interim, our 4 fine jurors are going to seclude themselves and work their magic. And when we come back at 6:30, we'll hear from Mayor Bill Yule of the City of Alexandria and Jay Bissett, the chairman of the Arlington County Board. They'll be here to give us a welcome to their communities and give their blessing on this this event and what we're doing. And then by that time, we think the jurors will be finished, and we will eagerly await their announcement. So let's go receive each other.